Hello, everybody! So, it's been a hot minute since I released a video on this channel. And to be perfectly honest, that's for a variety of reasons. For one thing, I've been very busy. But also, I don't really want to do an update to my Oscar predictions until after Cannes. Because I know that there's some speculation, and I know some things have already been disproven since my last video, but so much is up in the air. I really feel like Cannes is the proper time to get a good look at everything. But I do want to do another video. And this is something that's been circling in my mind. I've actually been about to record this video for some time now, and stuff just keeps getting in the way, unfortunately. But I really don't want to abandon this channel. I really do want to keep making videos. So without any further ado, I want to talk today about a subject matter that's been plaguing me for years. And for a while, I debated if I even should do a video on this topic because I'm not really the best person to share expertise about the situation. But I haven't heard a lot of people address this specific phenomenon, and that is this. In the 97-year history of the Academy Awards, during which time we've seen a lot of diversity. We've seen the Academy branch out and try to reward different kinds of stories and different kinds of filmmakers and actors and all of that. There is one hurdle that we have yet to cross. We have never gotten a Black Best Director winner. And that, when you say it out loud, it seems kind of shocking. In 97 years, it's never happened once. And it's something that I've brought up a lot. Usually in my year in advance videos, I'll always usually bring up this factoid and be like, ooh, is this the year it finally happens? And it hasn't happened. We actually haven't gotten a Black filmmaker nominated in that category since 2018, which is really shocking. But even more so shocking, we have only ever had 6 Black filmmakers nominated in the category. Ever. 6 filmmakers in 97 years. That is insane. In that same time, we have seen 3 women win Best Director. We have seen multiple Hispanic directors win. We have seen Ang Lee, who's Indian. He won it twice. Chloe Zhao is Chinese. She won. Bong Joon-ho is Korean. He won. Daniel Kwan of The Daniels is half Vietnamese, half Chinese. So we have seen diversity in the Best Director category, but for whatever reason, we haven't seen this. And yes, I am aware I'm maybe not the best person to talk about this topic, but I just sort of wanted to air out my feelings because I did a little research in terms of trying to figure out why. And this specific video, if you have anything you'd like to add, I'd love to hear different voices on this on the comment section. But I was sort of trying to rationalize why this hasn't happened. And because if you look, we've seen Black directors direct films that have gone on to win Best Picture. We've seen Black producers win Best Picture. We've seen Black winners in every acting category, in both writing categories, costume design, production design, sound, score, documentary, even animated feature, which is the most recent category we've gotten a Black winner there. And the only categories outside of director where we haven't gotten a Black winner are film editing, cinematography, and oddly enough, international feature. And there's a whole conversation to be had right there about how the international voting branch of the Academy tends to favor Eurocentric films, and they almost never recognize cinema from Africa. But that feels like a topic worthy of its own video. For right now, I wanted to specifically look at the Best Director category. And, okay, so right off the bat, in terms of answering the question, why have we never gotten a Black winner, let's first look at the opportunities the Academy had to do it, because it wasn't very many. They've only ever nominated a Black filmmaker 6 times. And I'm saying Black and not African American because one of these people is British, and I don't... So, right off the very beginning, the very first nomination is in 1991. We're in the 90s. That's how far back this goes. Prior to that, it had never happened before. Although notably, this is only a few years after Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which I think caused a bit of an uproar at the time over it not being nominated for picture and director. So John Singleton, nominated for Boys in the Hood, could be seen as a makeup nomination, but it's certainly a worthy achievement of its own. Singleton, only 24 years old when he directed that film, still to this day, the youngest Best Director nominee in the history of this category. It was also his debut feature film, and also it's the only film that we're going to be talking about today that was not also a Best Picture nominee. The film only got one other nomination for screenplay. So for all of those reasons, I think Singleton was just happy to be nominated. He didn't stand much of a serious chance. That was the year Jonathan Demme won for Silence of the Lambs, which was a huge movie. Unfortunately, Singleton, very new on the scene. I'm sure there are some older white voters who maybe were not too pleased with the movie. There's a number of reasons why I don't think Singleton came very close, but he got on the board, which is significant. And then it would only take another 18 years before we got another Black nominee, this one being Lee Daniels for the film Precious. At least this movie was up for Best Picture and had multiple above-the-line wins for supporting actress and adapted screenplay. So clearly this movie was loved. But there was another movie that was more loved that season, that being The Hurt Locker, and Kathryn Bigelow had her own narrative, being the first woman to ever win the category. Lee Daniels, while people really liked the film and his direction by proxy, it's not really the showiest direction of the nominees. So it does make a certain amount of sense. Plus, Bigelow had the whole narrative of her beating her ex-husband, James Cameron. So it's not really that surprising that Lee Daniels didn't end up winning. But then, only a few years later, in 2013, we get Steve McQueen for 12 Years a Slave, the movie that goes on to win Best Picture. Now, from what I remember that year, it was a really tough race between 12 Years a Slave and Gravity for Best Picture, but everyone kind of assumed that director was a lock. Director was going to go to Alfonso Cuarón. Cuarón had been in the industry for longer, was very well respected, and people were just really blown away by the technical mastery of Gravity. In hindsight, knowing that Cuarón would go on to win another Oscar for Roma, I feel like this is the one time where it should have happened, because 12 Years a Slave is a really amazing film and an astonishing feat of filmmaking. One could argue, given the sets and the large cast that is in that film that you really don't have in Gravity, one could argue it is the better directorial achievement. I am very curious to know how close the tally was, because I don't remember McQueen having a ton of precursor support for that film. But the movie was obviously very loved, and McQueen, while he hadn't done a lot, he did have a few things on his resume with Hunger and Shame, so people, I think, knew vaguely who he was, or at least knew that he wasn't the action movie star from the 60s that he shared a name with. So Steve McQueen, I think, reasonably close. And the fact that he directed a film that won Best Picture, that was history-making in and of itself. So just sit tight there, we'll get you next time. Only that wouldn't be the case, because 3 years later, we get another Black filmmaker directing a Best Picture winning movie and not taking home Best Director. Barry Jenkins. Now, what's unfortunate is that because this is the whole La La Land Moonlight fiasco that we always, we're going to be talking about that till the end of time, no one was ever seriously talking about Jenkins winning director, because no one was seriously talking about Moonlight winning picture. It was just naturally assumed that La La Land was going to sweep the night. And what people forget is that La La Land wasn't just expected to take home picture, it was also expected to take home sound mixing and film editing. And I, at the time, was predicting it to win costume design. So that movie legitimately underperformed at the awards, which makes me wonder if Barry Jenkins was close. I'd be very curious if they ever released the records to know who came closer to winning, Steve McQueen for 12 Years a Slave or Barry Jenkins for Moonlight. I mean, Barry Jenkins was not very well known, I have to imagine, prior to Moonlight. So I mean, Damien Chazelle was also kind of new, but he had Whiplash just a few years earlier, which was a big hit. So it's just really, really unfortunate that we have these two instances of these brilliant, brilliant filmmakers making astonishing movies that win Best Picture, and the directors don't come along for the ride. Now, we don't have to wait too long for the next nominee, that being Jordan Peele for Get Out. But this one I also feel kind of lucky to be there because the movie was a genre film. It's kind of crazy that Get Out had the run that it had, and it ended up winning Best Screenplay. Looking back at that year, I remember it was a close race between Shape of Water and Three Billboards, but I've heard a few people say in hindsight that Get Out probably should have won, even if it would have been a very atypical winner. It was the movie of the moment. It was the film that captured so much of how people were feeling. But at the end of the day, it probably was a little too out there for the Academy to fully embrace it. And that was the same year that Christopher Nolan was nominated for Dunkirk. And we had the winner, of course, Guillermo del Toro, who was so loved for so long. I think Peele was in third place, but Del Toro had a huge fan base, and that movie was so loved and ended up winning Best Picture. And of course, Nolan was in second. So it was just really, really unfortunate. And I really love this niche corner that Jordan Peele has carved out for himself, making these big, big movies that he's one of the few auteur directors we have today where it feels like any new Jordan Peele movie is an event. And unfortunately, his follow-up films, Us and Nope, were not recognized by the Academy in the same way. And then just 1 year later, we had Spike Lee getting his long overdue Best Director nomination for BlacKkKlansman. Okay, this is interesting because every time I go back to 2018, much like Get Out in 2017, I'm like, BlacKkKlansman probably should have won Best Picture. I mean, we sort of make that into, at the time it was a race between Green Book and Roma, but Roma, it makes sense why the industry couldn't fully embrace that one because it's a slow movie. It asks a lot of the audience. And yeah, not every voter was going to be into that. They gave Cuarón director, but they weren't going to give it a picture. But at this point, Cuarón already had one, but people liked Roma as an achievement more. It's a shame that Cuarón has two. And okay, he's a great filmmaker. A lot of these are great filmmakers. Yeah. Spike Lee, I don't know if BlacKkKlansman is the most showy directorial feature, but it could have been seen as a legacy thing. Any one of these wins probably would have been really solid if it had happened. Maybe not so much Lee Daniels, but these are all really strong achievements, and I'm really glad that the Academy recognized them. But after Spike Lee, that's it. It's crazy that of these 6 Oscar nominees for Black directors, 3 of them were in consecutive years. And then, nothing. So, after I looked at these 6, the next thing I said was, okay, if we look at the past 6 years since this happened, who were some of the directors who maybe came close to nominations? And of course, I looked at the Best Picture nominees. And as it happens, there were 4 Best Picture nominated films that were directed by Black filmmakers but were not recognized in the Best Director category. Those being Shaka King for Judas and the Black Messiah, Ronaldo Marcus Green for King Richard, Cord Jefferson for American Fiction, and just last year, Ramel Ross for Nickel Boys. Now, Judas and the Black Messiah, I feel like that movie came close to a director nomination because it was really, really well loved in its time. It got a lot of surprise nominations, including the shocker of the century, Lakeith Stanfield nomination. And I feel like Shaka King was probably at least a little bit close, but then again, he's seen as such a new filmmaker, so maybe they didn't feel they had enough slots. I'm curious to know how close he got. And then we have both King Richard and American Fiction, 2 movies that were definitely very well liked, but not 2 movies where you single out the direction as something really impressive. I think with both movies, even though we knew that they were well liked, the direction just wasn't something that we ever thought they were going to nominate unless the films were in competition to win picture, which neither of them really were. And it is a shame because both are handsomely directed. There's nothing wrong with either film's direction, but it's just not what the Academy looks for. And then we get this most recent year, Ramel Ross for Nickel Boys. Now that is very, very showy direction. And you would think if the movie is loved enough to get into Best Picture, then it would get the director nomination. But it's tough. That film was so divisive. Some people loved the choice of it being a first-person camera POV, and some people really did not respond to it at all. And evidently, it was just liked enough to get into the top 10 for picture, but not quite liked to get into the top 5 for director. I have to imagine that Ross was very, very close to the nomination, though. So after I did that, I was sort of trying to figure out what to do with this information, and I decided, well, let's put a spotlight on all the great filmmakers who weren't recognized, who could have been. And I decided to do something a little crazy. I looked at this past year, 2024, and I looked at the giant list of eligible releases. There were 323 feature films eligible for awards consideration, and I went through each and every one of them to see how many of them were from Black filmmakers. And I was actually kind of stunned at the result because I did have to Google pictures of all these people, and some of these people are hard to find. These movies are pretty rare. They are pretty obscure, and sometimes you can't always tell from a picture. I'm like, I think that person is white, but it's entirely possible that I made a mistake or two. But even if I did, I don't think the end result would change that much, because what my findings show is out of 323 eligible films released last year, only 25 of them were helmed by Black filmmakers. 25. That is less than 1%. And according to an article I found, 15% of the Earth's population is Black. So these numbers do not match up at all. And you look at these movies, outside of Nickel Boys, the only other one to be an Oscar nominee in any way was The 688, directed by Tyler Perry. Not the sort of thing that was going to get nominated for director. And then you look at some of the other ones. I mean, you have Blitz, you have The Piano Lesson, you have Daughters, you have Mufasa the Lion King. Some of these films were reasonably in the conversation for some awards attention. But I don't see a ton of stuff here that's like, oh man, the Oscars really, really messed up by not recognizing these. Like, there's some good films, some bad films, but it's only 25 out of 323. It is a small drop in the ocean. And it just makes me feel, I only did it for this year because it took me way too long to go back and do it for other years, even though I'm very, very curious now. The end result is it just feels like a lot of Black filmmakers are not getting the resources they would need to tell their stories. And as to why, I don't feel really qualified to answer that question. But the other thing that I noticed while I was looking at these lists, if you look at these 25 films from Black filmmakers, even though they vary in terms of quality and tone, they all have one thing in common, and that is they are all about Black characters. Every single one of them. That is interesting. Now, obviously, it does make a certain degree of sense because obviously these filmmakers want to tell stories that they can relate to, stories about people that might not otherwise get told. So it does make a certain degree of sense, but also you don't see a ton of, I'm sure someone can point me in the direction of some counterexamples, but I feel like it's relatively rare to see Black filmmakers tell stories not about Black characters. And look, I'm not saying that they should be doing more of that. All I will say is this. When Kathryn Bigelow broke the glass ceiling and became the first woman to win Best Director for The Hurt Locker is not a woman's story. The Hurt Locker is a very masculine film with guys at war and guns and tanks and explosions. There's barely any women in the movie. And I've always found it a little, it's just crazy to me that the first woman to ever win Best Director did it by directing an incredibly masculine film. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that the first Black Best Director winner is going to have to make a very white movie? It's just going to be two white Starbucks baristas falling in love at Christmas time, the new Spike Lee joint? I don't know. It frustrates me. Even though I know that this is not an issue that strictly relates to me, I still want to talk about it. And I really, really hope to get engagement in the comments section. And it's interesting because I've sort of procrastinated on this video for a while. And when I first put this video out there, the intent was to connect it to Spike Lee and his new film, Highest to Lowest, which I was really excited for. I believe it's playing at Cannes, but not in competition. There was some concern about that. A lot of people have pointed out that Spike Lee only recently has been in the awards conversation. A lot of his films are not nominated. And so I was sort of losing faith in that. And then as I was thinking about it, as I was mulling it over in my head, this crazy thing happened with this new movie, Sinners. This film from Ryan Coogler that I really didn't have on my radar at all because I thought it was just a studio genre film. And it turns out that this is really, really good and might potentially be an awards contender. Now, as of this time, I don't know if I can say for sure that this movie is going to get nominated for Best Picture, but I've seen a lot of people suggesting that it could happen, and I want to leave options open. I want to see how well other awards movies do, but this is certainly shaping up to be the best reviewed movie to come out of the first half of the year. So could Ryan Coogler contend for Best Director? I don't know. Is he going to be the first person to win? I don't know, but he would certainly be right at place with the other 6 directors that I've mentioned because, Ryan Coogler, he's only made 5 films, but he's already made quite the name for himself as a brilliant visionary director. And maybe one day we might get some women on this list too, who knows? But, I don't know if Spike Lee or Ryan Coogler are going to contend for awards, or someone else that I genuinely don't know about as of this time. But I really do hope, I know it's going to happen, hopefully sooner rather than later. And hopefully when it happens, it creates opportunities for more Black filmmakers to get the resources they need to tell their stories. Because I know that the talent is there. And I sincerely hope that when it happens, it's also pure quality and not because voters feel an obligation to check off a box. Like, I know it's going to happen, hopefully soon. And I would love to see engagement on this video in the comments section, hopefully from people who are a bit more qualified to talk about this. I hope I maybe raised some awareness about this situation because it is a situation that a lot of people don't seem to want to talk about. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope to get more awards content to you relatively soon, and I will see you next time. Take care.